Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Willies. This is the progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. Remember, you can also send me a tweet to EGBERTOWILLIES. That is, at Egberto Willies. Let us engage. It is politics done right.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Well, folks, welcome to one more edition of Politics Done Right. I'm Egberto Willies, your host. Thank you so kindly for being a part of the show. We're having a great show here, the daily Politics Done Right show here in the local studios. We were to have someone else in our studio, but, you know, he's a new candidate, and you know what they do to new candidates. They have him running around the courthouses and trying to get papers filed, and I'm going to introduce him appropriately, but tell me a little bit of what you've been going through, my friend.
Well, hello. Today has been a very interesting day. We received a notice from the Harris County Clerk informing us that we had to file a personal financial statement. So we've got that all put together, and it should be legally in order and all that stuff. The instruction they gave us was completely wrong. So it does have to be filed today, but it has to be filed with the Texas Election Commission, not the Harris County Clerk's office. And it took hours this afternoon to find someone here in the downtown area in the Harris County Clerk's office that actually knew that information. So I've been down here for a couple of hours. I'm so sorry I couldn't be in Kingwood with you today. But
that is fine. The thing about it, the important thing is that we got you here, and we got you here now, which is what we wanted. We wanted to have. Remember, folks, what we said about here what this program is now dedicated to, and this program is dedicated to ensure that progressives get a hearing. Progressives that otherwise would not get on TV. Progressives that otherwise would not get on radio. The one thing we are going to make sure to do is ensure that progressives get heard. And when they get heard, guess what happens to them, John? They get what? Elected. If they're not aired, they don't get elected. And that's what everybody knows. So we are here to solve that problem. But folks, today we're going to have a great show. What is this show going to be about today? The show's title is, you know, since you were in studio, you actually had first billing on the show. It was called Jon Rosenthal Shows How We Take Back the State and National Congress. What do I mean by that? He put himself on the line. He decided that he was going to make a difference irrespective of what anybody else says. No, absolutely no Republican, no candidate should go unchallenged. Anyhow, here's how it goes. The subtitle: candidates like Jon Rosenthal, no, you don't win running against Trump. You do not win elections running against Trump. Here we go. It has been a crazy weekend. Donald Trump never hid his disdain for women. We all know that. How much so does Donald Trump love women? Oh, he loves women so much he hates them. This weekend, he proved that every low can be met by a lower low, as he laid praises to his departing wife, beaten Secretary, implying his two wives he abused were less than truthful. And what do we hear from the national, state, and local Republicans? What do we hear? Nada, niet, nothing. You would think that these guys who are the family values guys would come out there in defense of whom? In defense of these women. But they did not. They are niet, nada, no están hablando. But you know what? The sect of America that elected Trump will do so again. It is incumbent that progressives expand their base and tell people how they are going to make their lives better. It is not enough to run against Trump. Trump has degraded the presidency, and no longer will it hold that special place. The grassroots has to do its job and take over the country. John, do you intend to take over your little sect within the country? Yes or no?
Oh, you bet. Absolutely yes.
Absolutely yes. In that light, new progressives are running throughout the country. As usual, most are being ignored by the mainstream and local media. Here at Politics Done Right, we intend to highlight those progressives and ensure people know who they are. Americans must know that they have choices. Americans must know that they have choices. Today's progressive guest was supposed to be in studio, but because of the runaround that he got at the courthouse, he could not be. But you know what? He's a boxer out there. He's a fighter out there. He's making sure that he had to do whatever he had to do to make it right with the election commission, and at the same time keep his commitment to be on Politics Done Right to make sure that people can hear what he's all about. So welcome aboard, Jon. Jon is running as the progressive candidate for Texas House District 135. Rosenthal is a mechanical engineer with a BSME from the University of Texas at Austin. And I must pause here, because I don't know if I ever told Jon this. By profession, I'm a mechanical engineer. And guess where I got my mechanical engineering from?
You're a Longhorn too, aren't
I'm
you?
a Longhorn. The University of Texas. I know you remember Taylor Hall.
Oh, yes. I was there a lot.
And you remember the nuclear reactor in the basement of Taylor Hall?
Sure, yeah.
Those were the days, folks, when we all got radiated. But, you know, we didn't even know when the radiator, I remember when that nuclear reactor was on that green blue thing that you could watch in the water at the core. I don't know if you saw that or you remember that.
Oh yeah, we did class projects around that reactor. We got to walk around the thing, and but they did have us wearing the little dosimeters, a little thing on your clothes.
Oh, you must be a bit younger than I am. You must be a bit younger than I am, because we didn't get squat to wear. We just did it. We just did it. So I don't know how many rads I got or whatever. Anyway, Rosenthal has worked on in the oil and gas industry for over 20 years. Jon understands that no Republican politician in Texas or the country must be unopposed. After all, these people have decimated the state and country's coffers. Rosenthal will highlight the issues he stands for, from the environment to the economy to healthcare. So please remember to visit his website at rosenthal4usall.com. That's ROSENTHAL4USALL.com. Anyhow, welcome aboard, Senor Rosenthal. How are you doing today?
Gracias, senor. I'm doing very good.
Well, good. It's great to have you.
Nice. I got my exercise from running around downtown. I've been all over this map.
Well, you know what? That is good. And with new technology, it's great that we could still pull you in live, because I really wanted to get your picture out here. Otherwise, in this square, when you see your how the image is going to look on Facebook or the other places that it's at, you're going to notice that there was going to be a static picture. I would much rather have you here in the flesh, but this is the second best thing, and you look great as usual.
Oh, good. Thank you. I hope you picked a pretty picture.
Well, actually, I have you, the real thing, right now, so we are okay.
Oh, excellent.
So your face is all here. Anyhow, let's start with the questioning. Tell us, you have a very interesting story about how you became candidate for House District 135. Why don't you tell us that little story? Because America is listening. This is not just a local election, folks. This is something that we want to see throughout the country, not only in Texas, not only in Harris County, Texas. We want to see it in Mississippi. We want to see it in Alabama. We want to see it in New York and everywhere else. So tell us how you got here, buddy.
That's a great question. Thank you so much for having me here. This is it's really important, because what happened was, after the 2016 election, I was shell-shocked like a lot of other people, and especially after that inauguration, and the stuff started hitting the fan, and it just became a situation that I could no longer see myself sitting on the sideline. So I started an indivisible group. So I wasn't originally intending to be a candidate. We just wanted to help flip the seat in Texas Congressional District 7. And so our Indivisible for Texas District 7 is formed up, and we got a few hundred members. We've held a few candidate forums. I see myself sitting on the sideline. So I promote these candidates in District 7, and so we're materially participating in flipping the House of Representatives. So that's something that I felt very good about. And in the course of those kind of activities, it became, I found out that our House district in the Texas legislature, where I live, We have a GOP incumbent who's been in the seat for over 20 years and was going to be unopposed in the election coming up in November. And the more that I have learned about the Texas state politics, the more I understand that we need to have a progressive voice in the Texas legislature in Austin. Progressives are dramatic there, and the Texas state legislature has been for a very damaging pieces of legislation. They're disadvantaging our children in our schools. They're disadvantaging labor. They're obviously we didn't take the Medicaid expansion in Texas, so our insurance rates are higher than in other parts of the country, and so I decided to go ahead and run, and I filed for the district. And actually, I'm in a very competitive district. So
now let me ask you a question. I want to interrupt you a bit. Weren't you scheduled to run in another thing before?
Oh yeah. So on the day of filing, I wanted to oppose somebody named Paul Betancourt, and I'm sure a lot of your listeners know who this person is. He's prominent in Texas politics. Paul Betancourt is Dan Patrick's hand-picked successor for Senate District 7, and he was to be unopposed. So I originally filed to run against Paul Betancourt, and the chair of the Harris County Democratic Party calls me on the afternoon of the deadline. It seems like if it wasn't for the last minute, nothing would get done, right? So
it's always that way.
It's always that way. So she calls me up and she says, funny thing happened today. Somebody else has filed in Senate District 7 to oppose Paul Betancourt. So if you stay where you're at, you'll be in a competitive primary. And then she also let me know that the person who had committed to run in House District 135 for the area I live in, the Cy-Fair, Jersey Village area, that person had dropped out 3 hours before the filing deadline.
Wow.
And she was urging me, she was asking if I would switch my filing from the Senate District 7 to the House District 135. So actually, I was reluctant at first. It was such a decision to put my career on hold and get into politics in the first place. And I know who this Paul Betancourt character is, and I really just wanted to rough him up and take his spot. And then I looked up who my opponent's going to be in House District 135, and I changed my mind.
You knew that something had to be done.
He might even be worse. And not only is he worse, but he's more vulnerable. And so this is someone we can remove. And he is, we don't want to run on an anti-Trump campaign. We have plenty of positive things to talk about, but that guy is a Trump supporter, and so we can get rid of him. He's one of these conservatives that votes for bills that takes financing away from our kids.
Kind of explain that, because I don't know if you saw the article. I blogged about it a couple days ago. An article where there is a judge in, I think it's Tarrant County, who finally came out and really laid it on to the Republicans here in Texas, pointing out that what occurred when they cut the budget for education is they had written within the law that it was expected that every single school district would raise their property rates by 14% in 2 years. Did you see that?
It's like 7.5% the first year and 6.5% the second year, or something like that.
Right. Explain
Yes,
that.
exactly.
Explain, because that in effect was a tax increase by Republicans.
That's exactly what it is. And not only is it a tax increase, it's an increase on taxpayers like you and me.
Right.
It's on our property taxes. And so at the same time we're cutting our school budgets, we're also increasing taxes on working folk like you and me, then we're expected to foot the bill. And so on top of all the inefficiencies and everything else in trying to administrate our Texas schools, we're starving them for cash. And in the state of Texas, we're like in the bottom 2% of the country, I think.
Actually, we are almost last in what we give to students, and as
Right.
education-wise, we are, I think the only state behind us is Mississippi, if I recall correctly. But I could be wrong, folks. I like to only give fact-based information, but we're way down there.
Well, we're either dead last or second to last in what we spend per student.
Right.
And it has a lot to do with the financing model, and this all began under Rick Perry and has just continued under Greg Abbott and Dan Patrick.
Absolutely so.
Yeah, so basically what they've done is starved the Texas education system by allowing big business and corporations to open up some tax loopholes where they are not paying their fair share into the education budget. And so they're, go ahead.
Yeah, let me just, there's a listener who said, I just noticed, why isn't Jon Rosenthal page not in the description? Actually, his website is in the web page for the show, and you are correct that I should have put the page itself within the link. So what I'll do after the show, and thank you for pointing that out, is to make sure that his link for the page gets in there as well. Thank you very much for that information, Michael Rudnin. Thank you very much for that information. We'll make that adjustment. Let's see. Let's go a little bit. We'll come back to you with some questions, but let's go to Facebook and see what people are saying. There's a kind of beeping in the background. Yeah, that is Mr. Rosenthal's phone doing something funny. I can't help that. I wish I could. Marianne Castiglia, good afternoon. Bill McLeod says hi to John. What's that? What's that, John?
My phone is doing something funny?
Yeah, it's not, you don't have control over it. What you have is some feedback sometimes that occur, and then you get a ping on it. That is what's occurring right now. So I don't think you have much control other than muting whenever you're not talking, but I don't want to miss anything that you have to say. Michael Rudin also says progressives have a supermajority in the issues that matter. You are right. It's all about getting our message out. S17 post image. Oh, that is a website. Can't say that one. And let's see what else. Of course, we have our resident, what I call our resident conservative that listens to the show all the time. Mr. Ledoux says, really? What issues? Okay, Mr. Ledoux, we're going to talk issues. All right. Tell me, what's your platform with regards to, my passion, healthcare. What do you want to do about healthcare here in Texas? As you know, right now, Texas, the Republican government has effected one of the largest murders in this country, and I don't say that lightly, by rejecting the Medicaid expansion to Obamacare, and in doing so, causing over 2,000 Texans to die every day. That is worse than us executing people when there was a solution that would have costed nothing. So tell us, what's your plan when you get to the
Actually,
State House?
I completely agree. And what we need to do is have enough of a voice in the Texas legislature to pressure the governor. And if pressure doesn't work, we just need to come with legislation that requires them to extend the Medicaid expansion for Texas. The starving of those dollars to our, healthcare budgets in the state of Texas is what makes healthcare more expensive for all of us. And it makes our insurance rates go through the roof. I personally had to buy insurance at the end of last year, and it's pretty expensive for me and my wife. It's
you don't
called
get much.
Not that affordable. So we really need to accept the Medicare expansion, and then we need to look at ways to control the cost overall of healthcare in the state, nationally too, but in the state especially. And I think there are ways to do that that'll reduce the cost. So if we can bring the dollars in for the Medicaid expansion and also reduce the cost, I think that'll make great strides for the people of Texas.
No, I'm a bit. I don't know where you stand on Medicare for all, but I'm a proponent of Medicare for all. Are you a proponent of Medicare for all, single payer?
I definitely am a proponent of payer systems, and I don't know. I'd love to see this proposed in California actually go through so that they can be a model for the rest of the states in the country.
Right.
As some states start to enact systems like that, I think the pressure will grow on the other states. To be completely frank, it's the red states where people need help, and those people are on assistance programs in red states more than in blue states. So lowering the cost and making health care available to everybody, especially in a single payer system where it lowers the cost of health care overall when people can access health care early and engage in the preventive care and the health services that help them avoid more expensive treatments later on, right?
Yes, you're right. And I want to say something to our conservative listeners. We have quite a few of those. You've been led to believe that somehow you're giving these people who've gotten Medicaid expansion some sort of a giveaway. What you've done by supporting the Medicaid expansion to the Affordable Care Act is you're actually voting to reduce your bills. Because what happens is when these people who need health care must have health care, by law, if they go to an emergency room, they have to be stabilized. And you know who pays the bill to stabilize them? You do. So you either have the big pool of people who get the Medicaid expansion and can go to their primary care physicians and can go to regular doctors, or you treat these people without insurance in the emergency room. And the persons who pay them you pay them at a much higher cost. In effect, it's a transfer of wealth from your personal income to a few rich people who own these emergency rooms. So it is very important that you guys know that. And when it comes to whenever they talk about government takeover of healthcare, chew on this. It only takes 2% of the budget, the income of the budget in Medicare to pay to administer Medicare. It takes 17% or more. When you add all the costs, it can add 30%. So you're giving up to 30% of your money away when you pay premiums to some fat cats who own the stocks, who own the shares in that company. While if you are giving it to the Medicare only takes 2%. Remember that, my conservative friends. Medicare for all single payer is a conservative idea, whether you want to admit it or not. John, let's continue on what the other things that you believe in, my friend. You have an environmental platform as well. What can you tell us about that?
Well, I do. So there are a few things. Let's focus on the clean energy initiative.
Let me stop you a second, because your phone, I think you probably have to hold your phone a little bit more steady because you're squelching in and out.
Let me see.
Yeah, that sounded great.
Is that better?
Yes, I think it is.
Okay, good.
Go ahead, proceed.
Yeah, I keep my fingers away from the little microphone area. Is that better? Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, but you're kind of going in and out. So if you can hold that phone in such a way that you don't block yourself. Or what happens is all these phones have a squelch mechanism, and it thinks that some of the stuff is noise.
Well, and if you're listening to a politician talk, it might be a lot of it, right?
Go ahead, John.
Okay, so there's a few things. So the first thing is about climate change and reality of climate change. We are seeing that in Houston in a really huge way, right?
Right.
We get severe weather, 100-year storms, 500-year storms every other year. They're no longer 100-year storms. They're every other year storms. So we, as a country, as a society, need to address that. But what I would like to do for Texas, I'm a little bit selfish about this. So I've been an engineer in the oil and gas industry for over 20 years, really 25 years. And the oil and gas industry has contracted. It's depressed and it's contracted, and we have thousands of talented people who work, just like me, and we have facilities, and let's just call it a complete infrastructure for energy industry right here in Houston, Texas, that it's not utilized or underutilized. And so I would propose to give incentives to clean energy initiative, clean energy technology companies to come to Texas and do business here. We have got workers, facilities, and infrastructure waiting to work on stuff. All of those functions happen very well, from oil and gas industry to the clean energy industry.
Okay, let me ask you, John. Right now, I understand what the problem is with your phone, why we get some of that line, and that has to do with you're using the speakerphone. Do you happen to have a headpiece at all, or you don't have that with you right now?
No, but let me try holding it like this. Is that a little better?
Yeah, because what happens is it's trying to, whatever comes out the speaker, it's trying to squelch it out, and sometimes it squelches your voice itself. Anyhow, so you're saying that we have the infrastructure here. I don't know if you realize it, that Texas is the largest producer of wind energy. I mean, you would think that with a lot of the crazy politicians we have who are not particular about the environment, how did we become the number one wind producer?
Actually, I know about that, and part of that is because we have, not only do we have the people and the facilities to make that stuff and put it together, but we've got a lot of land, and we got a lot of wind. And so they're just taking advantage of that. There's a lot of open space for windmill farms. I think California does a pretty good job of that because they've got so much land, but it's difficult land to build on out there. And here we have vast stretches of flatlands where it's very easy to put up the windmills and we can have wind farms. So we should be manufacturing those things in Houston, and I don't think we are. I think the parts come from out of state and get assembled and
including from Denmark. Yeah, Denmark is one of the biggest producers of turbines out there. Now,
so I have to tell you that.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. In Houston, Texas, we have the capability to produce massive machinery, huge technologies. And we can build on a scale that very few areas are equipped to deal with. And that's why I think we can attract the energy industry to work here.
Excellent. Now, Michael Rudwin says single-payer Medicare for all is $500 billion cheaper than what we have now, mostly by cutting the insurance industries from their ill-gotten share while increasing coverage to all of our citizens. And he gave the link to the PNHP, which is a national health care program, Physicians for National Health Care Program, if I recall it correctly. Now, let me just tell you that just before I got on the air, there's a little thing there's a notice that came out on CNN where Aetna is being sued, and they're being sued because, as it turns out, when you ask for a particular procedure without looking at your medical records, Aetna would simply deny your service. Now, the reason I wanted to bring that up, I know we're talking about the environment, but since one of the readers on Facebook brought this up, this is an important point. One of the selling points that the Republicans have been using against universal health care or anything similar to the health service in Great Britain or Canada is the claim that, government control of your health care, government is going to tell you whether you can live or die. Government is going to tell you whether you can have a service or not. What I've been trying to tell folks all along is insurance companies are there to do the same, to do that, but it's actually worse than the government because they have to try to make a profit to maximize that for their shareholders and to pay executives. So they have an immoral reason for having to deny you. While the government most of the times, first of all, won't deny you unless it's a doctor trying to rip you off. So folks, those who think that somehow government takeover of healthcare is a bad thing, even though what we're talking about isn't necessarily government takeover of healthcare. I am probably not like Mr. Rosenthal. I want government takeover of healthcare because I believe government is we the people. And if we the people do our job in electing the right people like Jon Rosenthal and others, then we the people would be able to generate the right type of system. John?
Oh, I agree. I'm not opposed to a government takeover of healthcare. I think it's managed very well in other systems. People can debate that as they choose, but the truth is that for less money, they are achieving better, healthier outcomes for their citizens.
And that's what it's all about, isn't it?
That's what it's all about. So, all right. So I understand that insurance companies have a lot of money to lobby with, and they do not want to be deprived of their source of income, and I've got that. The cost savings comes largely out of insurance companies' pockets and perhaps out of hospitals as well. So there are some powerful lobbying forces that we are going to have to combat to get this done. But it's for the good of the people, and it's for our health, for you and for me and everybody else. So we can achieve better outcomes for our health care at lower cost. It's better for everybody except for the people who profit off us. And I just want to add that is wholly immoral. So if you have a business and it's your job to profit off of people's illnesses, that is wholly immoral. We have a moral obligation to take care of each other on this planet, and that's what we're talking about here, at least at a basic level. So Insurance companies can still offer their high value, high level services if you want priority treatment or non-prescribed, elective procedures and all that stuff. They can profit off that just fine. But when it comes to people living their lives and being healthy, that's not an area where we are. What do you call that? Where we are the profit field,
Absolutely not. We're not going to profit off of the death of other people like we are right now. Right now, we profit off of births, we profit off of living, and we profit off of death. It's amazing, but when it's not expressed that way, what happens is people don't see it, and they just live through the prisms that the corporatocracy would have them live through. But when you take a look at it honestly, you get a chance of what it is. Now, on your issues page as well, you had a section on public schools. Give me your public school policy.
Okay, so this is something I'm truly passionate about. I have been attending school board meetings. I have already been at HISD. I also plan to go to Cy-Fair ISD, which is my district. But basically, the entire Houston area, and Texas, all over, our schools have a grossly flawed funding model. And the loopholes afforded to big business and corporations starves dollars that used to flow into our education system. And now, with that massive shortfall, you and I have to make that up with our property taxes. So,
I don't know if people heard our discussion earlier. You may want to kind of tell them about what that Republican county judge had to say in Tarrant County.
Oh, yeah, and I can't remember the guy's name, but basically what it is they have written their school board bill where the way that they manage funding is by increasing the property taxes, 14% over 2 years. That's for you and me. So we already have very high property taxes in Texas. Any of you guys that own homes or property are well aware of that. We pay a very high tax rate, and we are either the bottom or second from the bottom in what we spend on our children in every school. So that's a broken model.
Absolutely.
And
so.
we have a candidate. We have a progressive candidate for lieutenant governor named Mike Collier, who has proposed closing these corporate loopholes. And this is a finance guy. People say he's boring. I think finance guys are by nature, if they're good at it, they're boring. But check out what he's got on the slate, because it puts billions, like $10-12 billion a year into the school budget without raising our property taxes. It would allow us to spend more money on our kids and get a better quality education for the children of Texas. So
I know Mike Collier personally, so I mean, I'm going to get him on the show at some time. He's a good man. He did the show at KPFT before, and he sends out his newsletter I think it's every month now that he sends it out. Mike Collier is not boring. Anybody who listens to Mike Collier speak at a dinner or whatever, he can be an exciting guy. He can make numbers seem exciting. So Mike Collier is your man. So we're going to have Jon Rosenthal out there with Lieutenant Governor Mike Collier. Go ahead, Rosenthal.
He is super friendly and super joyful. Actually, I'm going to be meeting with him next week. He's going to be at a function that I'll be at. I can't wait to talk to him about the school finance reform that he's proposing.
Right.
And there's another thing, the way that we measure our schools. So not a lot of people talk about this who aren't in the school system, but I guarantee you anybody who teaches schools or is involved with public schools in Texas is aware of the STAR testing. And we spend millions, hundreds of millions of dollars on buying, procuring, administering a test that does not test the progression. It doesn't test the development of our students, and then we use results of a flawed test to evaluate our teachers in our schools. And so if you see these schools that are labeled, quote, IR, it means improvement required. This is a precursor to the state taking over or closing our schools and reopening them as charter schools that are not subject to the same Texas Education Code. They're not subject to the same laws, and the kids, there's no evidence to support that these
I need to give you some kudos, Jon, and sorry for interrupting you, but I must. And the reason I need to give you some kudos is I went to an HISD meeting on, I think it was Tuesday or Wednesday of last week sometime.
Is this the one where I was at?
And you went up there and you said your piece. Folks, let me tell you, a lot of people think that that actually working the politics is just at, let's say, the federal level or the state level. It's not. You have to work it at the city council level. You have to work it at the school district level. And Jon Rosenthal was out there giving a piece of his mind to the they don't call them commissioners. What do they call them?
They're trustees.
The trustees, school board trustees. And he justifiably gave them their mind because they I think you commented on their undemocratic rules, if I remember correctly.
Yes. Yeah. So they are to rule Texas education agency. And what we need is for our school boards to advocate for the Texas. See, my parents worked at Texas. Well, my father worked at the University of Texas as a teacher, but my mother worked at EA for many years. And it used to be a beautiful, friendly organization who was in the business of supporting our local public schools and helping them maintain their accreditations and all that stuff. And they have been replaced over the era of Rick Perry and now Greg Abbott, and particularly Dan Patrick has a lot of influence there. And they have developed a whole new series of draconian rules.
Because they're ruled by ideologues.
They're ideologues. And, you know, when they institute rules that limit the amount of interaction for the constituents with our school board trustees in those meetings, that's just wrong, right? If you want to go to your school board, you should have that opportunity. It should not be, you know, limited to 30 seconds or 60 seconds like I was. If you say, you should be able to communicate.
What I like though is that you were very prepared. You made very good use of your 60 seconds, and you got a whole lot punched in that 60 seconds. And I'm actually doing a blog of it. In fact, it should have been out last week, but we got tied into some other things where we had some very strong speakers out there on the different issues. So good job. Good job with that. Now, folks, this is a call-in show. Nobody's on the line right now. Telephone number 646-716-5812. Again, that number is 646-716-5812. Right now, John, our reach on Facebook has dramatically dropped because of some new algorithms that they use. So we're slowly building that back up. So the good thing about it is what seems to do very well is our podcast right after the show. So you'll have a whole lot of coverage thereafter. But folks, what we need you to do with these programs that we come out here with is to share. Without you sharing, the algorithm doesn't know that it has to correct itself. The algorithm depends on you to do what it needs to do and get you to as many people as possible. So what else is there with your campaign? How is your fundraising going?
Actually, the fundraising is starting to pick up. I think especially people who are new to this process get shocked by the requirement to raise so much money. You cannot even imagine what some of this stuff costs. But there's a lot of expensive parts that go into it, and even to run a minimal campaign, it takes tens of thousands of dollars. Right. You know, even $100,000 or $200,000. I think the average spent in a successful Texas House race is around $200,000. So
whoa, say that again.
It's around $200,000 to win for a state rep, race, and maybe more than that for the Senate races. So when you see these candidates, you know, asking for money and stuff, if you can just pitch in $10 or $20, you know, that's a big help. When 1,000 people pitch in $10 or $20, you know, that's thousands of dollars coming in.
That is so true. I mean, and one of the problems we have in the progressive space, folks, is that we do not support all these different. The right wing has a whole lot of support for their candidates. They have a whole lot of support for their media. They have, their media is flushed in cash. We work on a minimalist. Look at Politics Done Right has two menial mixers and cameras and a few computers that run the different networks, etc. Think about if this was a right-wing station, we would have quite a bit more throughputs, and we would be putting it on all through.
And actually, I'd like to speak to that just a little bit, because here's what happens. Your conservative candidates, they are helping big business lobby against the citizens and the laborers of this state. And so who supports them? The big business. And what do big businesses have? They've got big money. And let me tell you something that most people here are probably not aware. So I'm sure most people understand that if you're going to contribute to a national election, a Senate, or a congressional candidate to go to Washington, there's a limit of $2,700 per person per campaign, $5,400 if you're a couple, right?
Right.
In Texas, no such limit exists. So for these House candidates, if you were a wealthy person and you've got your pet politician, you could give them $1 million, and there's
It's
no
amazing.
law against it.
That had a lot to do with two particular Supreme Court cases. It's called Citizens United and McCutcheon. A lot of people don't speak a whole lot about McCutcheon, but McCutcheon, I think, for what you're talking about, is probably the big culprit.
Could be. So
That was the particular laws we're talking about. Anyhow, there is Raphael Coyle. HISD is a perfect example of Democrat control and black people losing. This era is coming to an end. Why don't you answer Raphael Coyle? I think you have a good answer for that.
Well, the Democrats are not in control of the Texas Education Agency, and that's who's dictating the policy. And
There you
that's
go.
where the STAR tests come from. And I'll tell you what the STAR test has been shown by study to be a very accurate predictor of where somebody's community lies. So it's very good at singling out black and brown communities for lack of not being white. And it's like giving the same test to everybody, and you've got a fish and a monkey, and the test is who's better at climbing trees.
That is
You
funny.
can give the same test to everybody, but it's not equitable. It's not the same for everybody.
You know, there's a whole lot of studies that show that a lot of times that's a problem, even with some of the IQ tests, right? If you know what a saucer and how a saucer is arranged, and you know it fine. But if you go to some parts of the world, they don't know what a damn saucer is, and they don't need it, they don't use it. Anyhow, we also have Tony Uri. Tony Uri says, motivating through fear creates conservative reaction. Motivating through reassurance and confidence in the future creates progressives. Don't you agree?
Very good. I love it.
That's very good. Now, Michael Rudin says that schools are funded by property taxes creates a broken education system, typically along racial dividing lines. Adam Ruins everything, and he's talking to somebody else, covered this topic a while back. YouTube, and he gave the YouTube. P.S. I think it's the right. Yes, you think it's the right link. Okay, Scott Tillinghast, not sure about that generalization regarding Democrats. Have an article link to the info that. Okay, we'll look into that some other time. Regarding Aetna, CNN covered that topic yesterday. They did a surprisingly good job. There was a doctor that didn't check patient records when approving or denying coverage. Allow me to quote the top commenter, Sandy Jones. Are these the death panels that conservatives claim we'd have under ACA? So there are conservatives who were discussing death panels. It turns out there are death panels. They're just run by the private companies, not that big bad government. It's the private companies running the death panels. Democrats in general want some kind of economic. This is Scott Tillinghast. Democrats in general want some kind of economic safety, while Republicans have become increasingly convinced they do not need one. There is plenty of room for argument about how much of an economic safety net. The problem right in front of us is a GOP that has been evolving into more and more of a cult over the last 25 years. We also have from, let's see what other one is new that I haven't read yet. Okay, that one went out already. Okay, I think we're all read up on that. So I brought you in first because I wanted to make sure that what the connections and all of that would remain fine. But I think we have a caller here on the line. So let's go to line 713. Come on in, 713. You're on.
Hello, how are you doing?
I am doing fine. Who
How
am
are
I
you?
speaking to?
So I'm calling about the HISD failure in black neighborhoods.
Go ahead, sir.
Okay, this whole HISD policy has nothing to do with Republicans and Republican control. Those schools were failing over and over again. You're talking about 5 to 8 years or so of failing. The policy that they're implementing to try to take over schools, which I disagree with, because you take those local trustees are the ones who undermine those students, and they're not being punished for that. They're not being dealt with for that. Now, part of the reason is I know a lot of those people have since then left the board. But that particular board and the way they run policies and some of the school choice stuff they put in play surely played into what's happened in these schools. When you take some of the better talents away from those schools and you leave them like they left them, then a lot of what you got is those people who are going to struggle, who are struggling more. Now they want to close those schools. Sir, that has nothing to do with the Republicans.
Well, I mean,
Okay.
go ahead.
And Mr. Dutton also signed on to that policy as well.
I heard about that. Go ahead, John.
So actually, the gentleman has a very, very good point, and the HISD school board has made some egregious decisions. So you can't say it's because of Republicans on the school board, because the school board has very recently been taken over by progressives. So this is a subject that, Egberto, I don't know if you've had Yolanda Jones on your show before.
Yes, I have. In fact, Yolanda Jones have been on my show 3 times, and every single time had something to say about HISD, including that thing about moving the taxes. What is it called? Reclamation, I believe?
Repatriation or something like that.
Where we're losing a whole lot of, HISD is losing a whole lot of money out of the tax base in the Galleria area. Yes.
Yeah, and so while the gentleman is technically correct that it's not Republicans on the school board, all the stuff is generated starting from the TEA, and Republicans are in control of the Texas Education Agency and the law in Texas. What's happened is the HISD school board, especially in past years, just knuckled under to them. You know, I'm an activist before I'm a politician, and we say when our democracy is under attack, what do? Stand up and fight back. And so, right, stand up and fight back. And so when our school boards and our children's education is under attack, what do? We need to stand up and fight back and not roll over and just do whatever the TEA says they think we need to do. And so the HISD in past years absolutely has been complicit in accepting some of this stuff without question and not fighting back.
Let me ask: is this Raphael Coyle that wrote on the Facebook page? Don't let me call
Yes,
in.
absolutely.
We don't ever want
Yes,
you to
sir.
say, "Don't let me call in." We just want you to call in, my brother. You call. I want all my folks to call into the show because you have something to say. And as you can see, the next congressman from HD 135 has just agreed with much of what you had to say.
Absolutely.
I just wanted to let the congressman speak. I just want to let the representative speak, you know.
The potential representative. Let's not jinx him yet. We are going to get him elected because.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Yes, go ahead, my friend.
Yeah, so I'm definitely running for office. I don't hold the seat yet, but I do want to take that seat away from somebody who has promoted disadvantageous policies for our school children. And I plan on getting much closer with our school boards, who have a couple of new members who I think will be very helpful to advocate for our children and fight back against draconian policies by the Texas Education Agency. And you are absolutely right, sir, that our black and brown schools in black and brown communities have been disadvantaged, and we need to stand up and fight for them. And I understand it's late in the game, and it's sort of a crisis situation, but we really need to continue to urge our school board to fight for us, sue that damn Texas Education Agency, slow them down until we can get some progressives in the legislature in Austin to rewrite some of these laws that drive the draconian policies through the Texas Education Agency.
And I know John personally, and I know John is going to go out there and he's going to be one of those fighting to get that done. So folks, remember that name, Jon Rosenthal. Jon Rosenthal is the name that you should remember. A mis amigos Latinos, Jon Rosenthal, okay? And that's the person you want to get out there.
So my wife calls me Juan Galdamez.
I don't know where that last name comes from.
My wife's maiden name, so if I take her name, I'm Juan Galdamez.
Oh, Galda. That is funny. Okay, but again, look, is there anything else you want to add, Rafael?
No. No, I just wanted to, TEA is really doing enforcement of law that was passed by our legislatures, and we know that there are some Democrats that were part of the policy making that's allowing this to happen. And I may disagree with some of the takeover, but recapture. Look, Yolanda Jones had a process in place that deal with recapture, and it passed, and they came back. Hey, they came back with Democrats and put it back on the ballot again, and they went the other direction.
I remember well.
So I'm aware of Ms. Jones and her good work.
She has
I'm aware of most of these issues.
She was on Politics Done Right at KPFT, and she raised hell about recapture and try to get people on the ball. But anyhow, I have a call from San Antonio. Let me bring that in. I'll keep you hot if you want to come back in later, Rafael. Come on in. I think this is John from San Antonio. Enter the fold, John.
Yeah, good afternoon, Egberto. Good afternoon, John. How you doing?
Good, thanks.
Okay. I'm glad you're running, and I see that you're running unopposed, and so you will be the Democratic candidate, and you will go against the incumbent. And I also noticed that the district is trending toward Democrats, which is also a very good sign. So I wish you the best of luck, and I hope you win. A couple issues that I think that I disagree with you on, and I want to talk about those. One thing is when you talk about the lieutenant governor, I personally support Michael Cooper. I think he's a Bernie supporter. He's our revolution has been talking about him consistently. I think he's much more progressive than Mike Collier. And so that I encourage everybody to go to both of their websites, look at both of their issues sets, and make up your own mind. But on a personal level, I think Michael Cooper is a better candidate, and I understand Mike Collier has a much stronger donor base and is expected to win. But I'm just giving you my opinion. One other thing, now I agree with Mr. Rosenthal's take on single-payer health care. I think that you would agree with that, right?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Okay, one thing, though, I think is kind of counterproductive, and I'm not saying that there isn't a denial, that property taxes are slightly higher than in other states because we don't have a state tax, but I think it's very counterproductive to start talking about how our taxes are too high, because I think that, one thing that I talk about consistently is about tax phobia and how people, from the Reagan era on, are too obsessed with taxes, and this hurts people. It hurts working class people. It hurts middle class people. And whenever people start going on and on about how our property taxes are too high, is extremely counterproductive, and and it's a real turnoff.
John, let me ask you a question. John,
go ahead.
Not Jon Rosenthal, but John. John, I forgot. I was Amberley. Anyway, John, here's the deal. I don't think we discussed. I think what we discussed was that the county commissioner in Tarrant County said that they reduced the taxes in Austin so that they would raise the taxes in the individual school districts, which was Republicans going against their own tenet and passing a tax increase. But I don't think any of us have a problem with funding, put in more money into education, however it needs to be done.
Right, and I'd actually like to speak to that.
Well, what I heard,
because I agree with John in a way. We do have this tax phobia thing, and I keep getting this, the Americans for Tax Reform send all the politicians, and I pretty much throw that in the trash because those people don't deserve our time. They're backwards and counterproductive. And so I don't mean to ignite a phobia. What I'm saying is that they have raised property taxes on poor and middle class people to pay for these schools, and we can infuse our school budgets with billions of dollars in extra budget money without the need to increase the property taxes on the people who would feel it the most. So if I don't think that we need to be raising taxes on lower and middle class people, but the wealthiest 1% and the businesses and corporations can certainly afford to pay a little bit more on their share. And I'm not opposed to tax increases as long as we're not disadvantaging already disadvantaged communities by taking more money out of their pocket.
Excellent. John, hold a second. Meaning John Andale, let me go to 612. 612, you're on the air. Come on in.
Yes, sir. Thank you for taking my call. I just want to say quickly, when you use the term tax phobia, ever since when did people like paying taxes? I think most people like the idea of paying less taxes. And I find it interesting how progressives seem to feel comfortable being generous with other people's money.
Let me before John, absolutely, John. But I want to say something first, and then I promise you get your time, my friend. First of all, a lot of people who are conservatives, and I think you're a conservative, and thank you very much for calling. I hope you keep listening, and I keep calling. But here's the deal: a lot of money in this country is made in what I call ill gains. Okay, in other words, because a stockbroker makes $1 billion doesn't mean that he earned $1 billion. It means that in the current structure that our economic system is built on, he is able to get $1 billion in that system, which is something progressives like myself, I don't know about John who's running, want to change. So it's not about spending other people's money. It's not his money to spend. It is all of us who afforded him that right to get that money. But go ahead, John from Mandalay. John from San Antonio.
Yeah, first of all, when you look at income inequality, which is the biggest issue of our time, bar none, since the Reagan era, from the Roosevelt era to before Reagan was elected, that was the biggest growth period for the middle class, and the reason that happened was because taxes on the rich were high. At some point that they were 90%, and you know what? Our country was extremely productive, and so I understand that selfishness rules in this country, but we're going to be moving towards a more community-styled living, and hopefully, I'm really glad that the millennials understand this, and so that's, if you just look at history and when the middle class was growing and where people actually had the middle class and the working class had strong earning power, not like they have during this Reagan era and in the trickle down era. Those are just the facts. Go look up economic history,
John,
and try to understand.
We're running out of time, so I need to.
So let's break that down. So what you're trying to assert is that
sir,
because
sir,
we had
sir.
a really high tax rate, for example, in the 1950s, of where rates were up in near 70% plus. You think that
they were 90%?
You talk about that's what led to the boost. That's not what it did. What happened was that prior to the 1950s and prior, the vast majority of manufacturing in the world was done in America. And so because of that, there was a lot of blue-collar jobs that paid really well.
Yes, sir. What is your name? Okay, I got to stop you there for a second because
so what ended up happening
Sir, I got to stop you. We're out of time.
As we moved to more of a global economy, and we transitioned away from that, and you had a large number of manufacturing jobs.
I asked you to stop.
The United States.
Ssir.
That's what led.
Respectfully.
It had nothing to do with the tax rate.
That is not true.
I understand that you guys want.
Nothing.
Sir.
Nothing at all. Nothing at all.
Okay.
Because let's be honest. What you want is socialism. You're a Marxist.
That's right. You're right.
Okay,
I'm not a Marxist. I'm a democratic socialist.
Okay, hold on a second, John. Let me just say, John the politician, do you want to add to that real quickly? Because we're going to have to go real quickly.
I'm not going to step into a shouting match between two ideologically opposed people. I think, we are where we are right now, and changes need to come over time. And it can be sweeping changes, but we need to find a balance to read from where we're at now, because I do agree that income inequality and the wealth distribution has become a hugely massive problem, and current policies and tax codes have allowed that to happen.
I got to stop you there, but I just want to tell the audience here, first of all, I understand what our conservative friend is saying, which I just opened his mic, and I can't get you to speak again because the show is just about over. But let me just tell you, there's a better economic model than the economic model that we use. Whether you want to call it communist, whatever you want to call it, you can call it whatever you want to call it. But that's not what I believe in. I believe in an economic model that's worked and an economic model that is sustainable, mathematically speaking. And I'm not speaking in hyperbole or whatever. Our system currently is unsustainable, and reality has proved it to be unsustainable. That will change. It must change. As progressives come into power, it will change. As we get Jon Rosenthal.
What about the 20th century with communism? What happened in the 20th century with communism? Why did it fail so
We
miserably?
are not speaking about, my dear friend, we are not speaking about communism. That is a scare tactic that people use when we try to modify an
That's not
economic
scare
system.
tactics. That's the fundamentals of your ideology.
Wrong.
You believe in
Sir,
massive centralized. Yes, it is.
I want to go over
You
by
believe
2
in, you
minutes.
believe in nationalizing the means of production.
Man.
One
Not
at a time.
books, man.
Let-
Listen.
Let him speak.
You call yourself
No, we don't
you
do
call
that on
yourself
this
a
program.
Democrat
John,
socialist
speak. Hold on.
because of the negative history behind communism, and so because you don't want people to connect the dots, you have
Right.
to change your name to Democrat Socialist, so people don't realize what your real words are.
Okay,
what you want is to bring all the means of production, a centralized state,
Right.
and then redistribute the wealth to the general public like that.
Okay, John,
that model was a try,
Sir,
and
what
it
is your
failed.
name? Sir,
That's what happened. We tried it in the 20th century
I'm
and it
taking
failed
the program
miserably.
longer, sir. I'm taking the program longer because I want you to be heard, okay? But in the process of being heard, you also must listen. Politics Done Right is not a program for just a bunch of progressives. It's a program for everybody, and I want you to have your information aired, and I tell you why I want it aired. Because I'm going to debunk everything that you said, but I need you to say it, because when you're done saying it, it will be easy to prove that the Heritage Foundation has completely taken over your mind, and when opposed to you just sermonizing on what you have to say. I'll let you sermonize, and then I'll let John come back, and so forth. That is how we get things done. So, sir, let John correct you on the issue about the state controlling all means of production. No democratic socialists believe in the state controlling the complete control of the modes of production at all. And if you have to get that out of your head so that you can come together with us and change capitalism into a form that works. John, tell us what we discussed last week about capitalism and why it is that you have a problem in the way some socialist Democrats speak about capitalism. John, it's on you. John,
okay. I think we were talking more about Marxism. We were talking how we both agree that we're not necessarily Marxist, but we do feel that the government should run certain industries.
Absolutely.
And I agree with you about healthcare. I believe healthcare is a human right, and I believe the British system, which is the best system probably in the world, but I mean there are other good systems in Europe where everybody has a right to healthcare. It doesn't matter how much money you have, and this doesn't apply to everything. And I was speaking about how entrepreneurs should have the opportunity to be an artist, to open restaurants, to open just about any kind of thing that's done here in America and in the European system. So the idea that you're like painting me as a communist, you don't even know anything that I've been saying. And so like automatically you paint me this way, and it's ridiculous. I mean, it's like you're playing fortune teller.
And here's
so
what just happened. Let me just
what
say,
I want is
John, I got to stop you right there because we're going to end the show. But what I want to tell you is exactly what happens. Sometimes we get a conservative to come in and make some statements where they make absolutely wrong statements like democratic socialists want all means of production controlled by the state, which is false. And when we have the progressive come and tell exactly what they're doing, immediately thereafter, right now, who ran. I wanted to have an intelligent, educated discussion with this young man. He ran. That, for all my conservatives listening, that is a problem right now in our country. We have people lying about what others are about and put the fear. Most Americans in this country are progressives, period. The things that they want are progressive values. What we have are the mic of the worlds coming in, changing the reality of what we propose to scare you. Remember that. This is Politics Done Right. Jon Rosenthal, House District 135. Give me a 15-second closer, and we're going to shut this baby down.
15 seconds. Check us out, Rosenthal4usall.com, and support and like and share the campaign. We will take over the House, and we will make things better in Texas.
So says Jon Rosenthal. This is Politics Done Right. My name is Egberto Willis. Thank you, Jon, for always being a part of the discussion and bringing some intelligent discourse. We will be back tomorrow. And you guys, remember, do go to our Patreon site, patreon.com/politics done right, and help support community radio, help support independent radio, help support independent streaming, because that is the only way we are going to get the mics of the world educated on the real issues of the world. My name is Egberto Willis. This is Politics Done Right. You guys have a wonderful rest of the day.
Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Willis. This is the progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. Remember, you can also send me a tweet to EGBERTOWILLIES. That is at Egberto Willis. Let us engage. It is Politics Done Right.
1, 2, 3, 4.